Hey, so welcome to Radical Loyalty's very practical webinar on calculating the return of your loyalty program. So I'm Heidi, the CEO of the European Loyalty Association, which is a networking and learning membership organisation, especially designed for brands and retailers and their loyalty, their CRM and their engagement teams across Europe. And I'm happy to introduce Leah Grimberg, who will be your educator today. So Leah is the owner and principal of Radical Loyalty, a loyalty design and personalization strategy firm. And she has 20 years of practitioner experience under her belt, specifically in Canada, within environments like the Bay, Loblaw, Home Depot, and American Express. And when Leah isn't talking about loyalty, Leah guest lectures at various educational institutions and entertains her two very lovely young children on a regular basis. So, other than occupying the top spot for mumtrepreneur, she also holds an MBA, a Chartered Loyalty Marketing Professional designation at CLMP, and a postgraduate degree in AI, which sounds amazingly interesting, and I think I might have to do it myself. So if you've come to this webinar, if you thought that you'd learn how to project increase customer spend, estimate costs, and calculate the net return of your programs, you're in for a real treat and in really safe hands for the next hour. So you've made a really good decision today to join us. So I'm leaving you with Leah now. Hi, Leah.
Thank you, Heidi, so much. You make me blush. That was such a lovely introduction. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Radical Loyalty's webinar on maximizing the profitability of your loyalty program. A couple of housekeeping items before I get started. As you can see on the top left-hand corner, there's a QR code on the return on loyalty. That is a free guide that I am giving to you as attendees of our webinar. Please feel free to scan it at any point you like. It will send you the return of loyalty guide. Don't feel rushed to download it right away. I'm going to be using my own version, but feel free to do it at any point during the webinar. And also, webinars I find are a little bit funny in the sense that I actually can't see any of you. So I feel like I'm talking at you, not to you. So please feel free to engage with me on LinkedIn. I can see on the side of my phone all of your comments. So please go ahead and chat with me. As well as we're going to have an interactive component to our section. So please have your phone nearby, but I'm still hoping you'll pay attention to what it is that I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to start sharing my screen and we'll get right into things. We're going to have some accounting fun, but let me start with a story. What I grew up at American Express and Air Miles, which is Canada's largest coalition loyalty program, at least at the time. And so to me, loyalty was always the lifeblood of the organization. It's what made the profit and it's what made everything tick. So when I joined a particular retailer after, I was somewhat blindsided to have loyalty as a side project. And to me, the retailer was Sears Canada. And after working there, now I know what it felt like for loyalty to be an afterthought. I understand how loyalty can function with disconnected data where you don't have a single view of the customer, where your loyalty budget is constantly being cut, and where your communications are just mass blasts talking at people. And as you all very well know, or probably know, Sears Canada ran out of its runway and declared bankruptcy. And I'm not saying that loyalty was the main reason for Sears Canada's failure, but I would like to suggest that making sure that you're having your communication being irrelevant and alienating customers and having them silently attrite certainly does not help. But the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I do know what it's like to be in your shoes, and I know what it's like for loyalty not to have a seat at the table. A couple of recent articles talked about this. One from Harvard Business Review, that many loyalty programs fail due to poor program economics, and only 35% of organizations surveyed state that their loyalty program ROI has improved year over year. And when we face those kind of challenges, it is really difficult for us as loyalty program owners and as loyalty managers to be recognized at the C-suite if we're not seen as delivering. So that's the reason why I'm passionate about this topic, is to show to the rest of the organization the value that loyalty has to add. The current state of loyalty, many of you are likely very familiar with these sets of data, but consumers are still seeing value out of the program. 84% of consumers saying that they're more likely to stick with a brand that offers a loyalty program, and just a 5% increase in retention would drive increase in profits between 25 and 95%. But at the same time, loyalty program rewards are still seen as an expense. And so when cost needs to be cut, loyalty programs end up on the chopping block for some bizarre reason, which of course continues to squeeze our customers in not the right way. But what I'd like to the world that I imagine and where I'd like for you to join me is to imagine where you're a world where loyalty can be viewed as a long-term investment. And please feel free to drop an emoji in the chat as to whether you feel that could possibly be the case or should definitely be the case. As Haiti mentioned, who am I and why am I talking to you about this? I have more than 20 years of experience in loyalty and personalized marketing. I mentioned American Express and Air Miles. Haiti mentioned Home Depot, which she of course pronounces Home Depot, which is super cute. And of course, Sears Canada. Loblaw, of course, is Canada's #1 grocery retailer. And the Bay, most recently, is Canada's oldest department store retailer. And so I've touched many a loyalty program in my experience, and it's always managed a little bit differently everywhere. And then 2 years ago, I opened my own shop. And we are called Radical Loyalty, and Radical is not a spelling mistake. It's Radicle. And a radical in this particular case is a botanical term. And in botany, radical is a root of a plant. And what we do is we look for the truth in your data, and we'll help you decode the mystery of customer loyalty to get you loyal customers, not just any customers. So as I mentioned, now it's time for audience participation time. So please take out your phones and you can scan the QR code, or you can go to slido.com and type in the code 2390957. I just want to understand where we are and take a temperature check in terms of how do you measure your program's financial performance. Does it have its own P&L? Is it measured as an expense? Is it measured as part of marketing ROI, or you don't have a loyalty program yet? So please feel free to vote. And I'm not seeing any results right now come through. I'm not seeing any. Oh, there we go. It's on P&L. Anything else? No? Okay. Everybody's feeling shy this morning? Oh, there's marketing ROI. Okay. All right. Good to know. And then moving on to the second question is, how successful was your loyalty program financially versus last year? Better than, same as, worse than, we don't measure it, or we don't have a program quite yet. No, okay. Moving right along. So again, drop an emoji in the chat or let me know if this webinar is for you. This webinar is for you is if you're planning to launch a profitable loyalty program, or if you're done with justifying your loyalty program's existence and just need to be treated as a long-term investment, and you need to stop pushing water uphill and stop fighting for your job and just become a priority for your organization. So I'm hoping you are in the right room. Now we're going to get into the meat of the webinar and talk about loyalty program benefits. Then we'll talk about loyalty costs, calculating ROI, and then finally, I have something very special for those that participate with us all the way through to the end. And again, you're seeing in the center of the page the the return on loyalty guide that you can also download. Before we get to talking about benefits, I wanted to pause and discuss two terms and define them. The first is dilutionary. And dilutionary is a place where none of us loyalty managers and loyalty brand owners ever want to be. However, it is a necessary evil. The more important component is to be able to identify it. So let me define the term. The term is when you're paying customers to do something that they're already doing. So in this example, a customer used to spend $40 a month before they joined the program, and now they're still spending $40 a month. But now we are giving them points. So they're earning 40 cents in points for those $40 a month. Though that 40 cents in points is purely dilutionary. It's money that we unfortunately waste because they're not driving any behavior change. The main reason to have a loyalty program is to truly drive behavior change. And that's when incrementality comes in. Incrementality is the behavior that is caused specifically and directly by the program. So for instance, if a customer used to spend $40 a month and now they're spending $42 a month, and we know that that extra $2 is specifically because of the program, that $2 is truly incremental. And if we're paying them 40 cents, it means that we're still keeping $1.60 in profitability. So how do you actually measure incrementality? There are three ways, two that are not great and one that is much better. So one way is to look at before and after. And in the case where I had mentioned earlier, where a customer was spending 40 and now is spending 42, so that incremental $2 may be caused by the program, but there may be other factors that are causing it as well. So it could be things like the economic environment changed, or that particular member's circumstances have changed. They changed jobs, they have a new family member that's joined, etc. So there may be other factors at play. Member versus non-member is another fairly common way to justify our existence as loyalty members or as loyalty program owners. The challenge with this particular methodology is that our loyalty members typically start off as higher spending customers. So they are already spending more than non-members. And the reason for that is because we know that the customers that join loyalty programs already have an affinity for our brand. And so they are not equal to non-members on an average basis. So the better way to do it is test versus control. And the best way to set that up is before you launch. And so when I work with my clients, I make sure to have an in-market test to make sure that we understand that true incrementality. And it's important to set up a test in a proper way whereby you either isolate two similar customer segments or two similar markets that have behaved prior to the launch of the program in a fairly similar fashion. So similar spend, similar number of transactions, etc. And then what we want to measure is how they behave over time after the launch of the test. And so if you're seeing that gap between the test and control, that is what we would count as incrementality. Now, this works, of course, very effectively for programs that haven't launched. It is much more challenging for organizations that have an existing loyalty program in market. So what do you do then? It's that one, you would have to make sure that all of your promotions are set up in a similar way. So they have a test and they have a control, and then it's your promotional incrementality in aggregate that you want to sum at the end of the year to demonstrate that incremental spend. Are there any questions on this? Because I went through that fairly complicated concept in a rather quick fashion. So if there's any questions on that. Keeping an eye on the chat. Okay. I'm not really seeing questions unless I'm not really seeing them in the right place. I'll keep going for the time being. So in terms of other revenue considerations, in terms of actually contemplating the incremental revenue, we need to translate that into incremental margin. All you need to do for that is to multiply your incremental revenue by your average margin. And then there are other revenue considerations that could be additive to just incremental sales, which could definitely enhance the profitability of your program. The first one is an annual fee. So we need to make sure that the amount of the annual fee that you're going to be charging is competitive with your competitive set. Credit cards, for instance, do a fairly good job of that. And then secondly is what percentage of your members will be willing to pay a fee. And the rule of thumb is about 10% on that. The second one is a credit card. And credit cards, depending on the role that you think the credit card can play within your loyalty ecosystem, it can be just a sales driver, or it can actually be a profitability center and be profitable in and of itself, in which case that could be a great source of revenue as well. And there are two other really great revenue streams. One is vendor funding. This is particularly great in retail where there are lots of vendors. And let's say you're a grocery store. This is when the likes of Coke and Nestle pay for the points that are issued on their products, either as part of the base offer or on a promotional basis. And then finally, partnerships. Partnerships are great because now you get the benefit of data sharing between the organizations, but also on the revenue side, partnerships, depending on how they're structured, they can either offset some of the costs of the program, or they can pay for issuance of points that are issued through their channels. I'm going to hop over to the tool that I had mentioned earlier. So this is the Return on Loyalty Calculator. I have pre-populated this with some numbers just for our ease of calculation, and I've made them relatively round numbers for the ease of us working. But the version that you're going to be downloading does not have any numbers in here. That is for you to pre-populate. And so on the right-hand side, you're going to see instructions. And so anything that is green in color, you can edit. Anything that is red is already preset. So those are the formulas and calculations. So the numbers that I have pre-populated is we have annual sales of 20 million, and we have gross margin of 40%. On average, our customers spend 100 times a year with us, and average transaction per customer is $100, which gives us 2,000 customers. Now, this is an estimate. So these figures so far have been actual real data, and now we're going to get into some assumptions. And this is where the tool allows you to play around with numbers to see how profitable you would be able to get. So in this case, I assumed that about 60% of our customers would be enrolled into our program. Now we're going to expected sales lifts. We talked about 100 transactions per year per customer at $100, and we're expecting a lift of 4% and 5% respectively, and a good lift that you can expect is between 2 and 5% for each. which means that we're expecting total loyalty sales of 13 million, which is an incremental of 1.1 million for a lift of 5.5%. We're also assuming an annual fee for the top tier of customers of $150 a year, and about 10% of them would pay a fee, which means that our revenue is going to be $18,000 a year. And if we're going to dive down, we're going to look our incremental sales we mentioned is 1.1 million. Multiply that by the margin gives us about $442,000 plus $18,000 for fee for a total of $460,000 for upside. So if we go back to our deck, the way that we calculate the total loyalty benefit is we have our incremental loyalty margin. In this case, it was 442. Sum of other loyalty revenue at 18 for a total sum of 460,000. Now, this is just the hard benefit that is within year. This does not include all of the long-term benefits that you're going to see from a loyalty program, which are a little bit more difficult to measure and to prove. The big one of that is customer retention, that we absolutely know that our loyalty program members are much stickier than other members. It's just quite impossible to measure that within a year. But other benefits include improved promotional response and brand advocacy. Now, I'm going to take a quick pause here to see if there are any other questions. Though I'm not quite seeing comments or questions. Okay. So we'll move on to costs now. So before we start with costs, again, we're going to have two working definitions. We're going to have dividend and breakage. Dividend is the value that the member receives on the base program based on their spend. It is measured at a cost to the program as a percentage of the on the dollar spend. So what that means is, let's say the program value proposition is if you spend $1, you get 1 point, and 100 points equals $1 in reward, then the dividend is 1%. And the way that you calculate it is $1 of reward that the customer receives divided by $100 that they need to spend to get 100 points to get that $1 in reward. So that is 1%, 1 divided by 100. And then the second component is breakage. And breakage is the percentage of issued points that will never be redeemed due to various reasons, including forfeiture, point expiry, and customer behavior. And the way that it's calculated is as 1 minus the ultimate redemption rate. And the ultimate redemption rate is a percentage of points that are redeemed since the launch of the program. So if your program has been around for 10 years, this is taking the total number of points ever issued and the number of points ever redeemed and dividing one by the other, which gives you the ultimate redemption ratio. And breakage are the points that are still sitting, on the books. So the way you calculate a reward expense is you take your dividend, and dividend is typically between 0.5% and 2%, particularly for retail. And then you add bonus points. And bonus points are critically important. And a lot of organizations forget about bonus points. And bonus points, you have to have a healthy budget for that. And the reason for that is once a customer joins a program, you may see a lift in their behavior, and then they go back to their natural habit and their baseline. If you want to continue driving that incrementality, which again, that's the only thing that counts from a loyalty program profitability perspective, you need to have a healthy promotional program, which incentivizes them to continue spending and continue engaging. And so what I would suggest is having a bonus budget in and around 25 to 30%. Now, we know that points are going to quote unquote break, so percentage of points that are not going to redeem. So we sum up all of the points that we're going to be issuing and multiply that by 1 minus breakage. And breakage, we recommend the range between 25 and 35%. And then you multiply that by gross margin. So let's see how that works in terms of our lovely calculator. We're going to move back up to the expenses. So in this particular example, we assumed a 1% dividend, 35% breakage, and a 25% reward budget, which gets us to a total cost of $43,000. And then there are other additional costs that are part of operating the program. And that's things like technology, customer care, marketing, analytics, any full-time resources that you have dedicated to your program, web development, and app development. In this case, I've plugged in some assumed numbers, which brings us to a total to $238,000. And so our total costs are $280,000. So it's the reward costs plus all of the other operational costs. So other expenses are listed on this particular slide. And then what we did was we added up our total reward costs of 43 and some of other expenses at 237, which brings us to a total cost of 280. I see that there's a question from Philippe on how do you measure the segments? Are you talking? I'm assuming that you're talking about the segments for measuring your loyalty program incrementality prior to the launch of the program. What I would suggest is cluster analysis and picking, and if you can do it on a segment level, that you can create a statistically significant sample size, and then pick an audience that is as alike to that test as you can possibly have, or simply randomly split them down the middle. And if it's not possible to do it on a segment level, depending on the kind of communication channels you have, in some cases you may not be able to communicate cleanly so that your only your test universe would be able to get the loyalty program sample. In that case, what I suggest is to pick 2 markets, 2 cities, 2 countries, whatever is big enough to give you enough of results, and make sure that they behaved fairly similar, that they were the similar size, similar demographics, similar level of sales, and then launch in one and not the other for a period of about 3 to 6 months to be able to measure your results fairly well. I hope that answers the question, Philippe. Okay, so we'll jump into calculating ROI, and calculating ROI is fairly straightforward. It's total loyalty program benefit, which we had calculated to be at 460, minus costs, which were at 280, which gives us program contribution of 180, and then we divide the program contribution divided by costs, which gives us a return on loyalty of 64%. And as I had mentioned before, this calculation does not include any of the wonderful long-term benefits. So if we want to jump back into the tool, this information is presented here. So your program contribution is 180 for a return on investment of 64%. And I promise we are done with the heavy lifting here. Now we get into some of the more fun stuff. But in the meantime, are there any questions? And also, what have you learned so far? What's the one tip that you can take back to the office right now and achieve a positive return on loyalty? Nothing? Nope. Okay. And I'll continue. Lord Kelvin said, if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So measurement is the first step to get a seat at the table, as I mentioned before. And I had promised you something extra and something special. And thank you so much again for those that stuck around long enough. And I'm actually going to go back. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and go back in here and change up the QR code for everybody to see. Okay. So this is your something special. This is the gift that I wanted to share with you. So the question is, imagine a world where loyalty had a real seat at the table. It was a priority for the organization. It was woven throughout the entire customer journey and had the support of finance, marketing, and operations, and it was never considered just an expense. And if that sounds amazing to you, please send me an emoji in the chat. I see Jason had sent one earlier. Thank you so much, Jason. And the something extra here is that each organization is different, and I'd love to be able to help find the solution that's right for you. So far, we had gone in quite a lot of depth and a lot of detail through the calculator, but I want to be able to give something for you as value added for a chance for you to walk away with something real. And as I mentioned, I had plugged in numbers into the calculator that were theoretical and hypothetical. Obviously, this is not representative of each and every one of your businesses, but I'm very happy to offer to you to sit down with your organization and plug in your actual real numbers. And if you want to understand what it would be like to work for us to work together, the QR code that you see on the deck is the same as the QR code that you see in the top left-hand corner. Hopefully it works. I saw that the earlier one, there were some challenges with it because the two were overlapping. But this one, the one at the top of your screen should work. And that will be a link that takes you to book a 1-hour free consultation with yours truly, where what we'd be able to do is use your real numbers or your index numbers to calculate your return on loyalty. But the more important aspect is, how do you drive an increase? What are the levers that you have to pull to maximize the profitability of your loyalty program? Because right now, just the ability of calculated gives you where you are, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how do you keep improving. And that's where we can do some really great work together. Again, this offer is for you if you're planning to launch a new program, if your loyalty program is struggling financially, if you're done justifying your program's existence, and if you just want to stop fighting for your job and become a priority for your organization. And then again, this is the QR code if you want to apply. And the last slide for me is, in God did we trust, all others bring data, which I thought was really fun. And thank you so much for everybody for joining. This was a very, very quick and dirty run through loyalty and calculation on return on loyalty. I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions that I'm seeing. I'm not seeing any questions, in which case this will be a very short webinar, and everybody's going to get some time back in their calendars. Okay. I thank you so much again for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm hoping you found this as valuable as I did, and I'm hoping to talk to you soon. I'm going to be sending out both a copy of the webinar and a link to the feedback form. I'd really appreciate you taking the time. This is the first of hopefully a few rounds that I'm going to be running this webinar. So your feedback is crucial to me to continue improving these. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.